was therefore an act of provocation by Ukraine.
On my side, I would like to be very clear on that point, that it was not a provocation, and by the Russian side also it was not a mistake or some technical coincidence that they attacked 3 ships of Ukraine. The situation is that the Sea of Azov, according to the agreement dated 2003, is the territorial waters of both Russia and Ukraine. And the Kerch Strait is an open for navigation for both Russian and Ukrainian vessels. Even more, before passing from Odessa to Mariupol, our 3 ships were requesting like a special permission to pass through the Kerch Strait. And now Russians are pretending that there was no such request. And even more, they physically attacked our tug vessel, and that's why we have 6 persons who were injured.
Do you feel, in effect, this is the beginning of Russia attempting to mount an economic blockade, more or less, on Ukraine?
It's even more than, economic blockade, because Russians started, after the annexation of Crimea, Russians started provoking us in the Sea of Azov all the time. So they started with detaining the trade ships, for example, like for 3 hours, for 1 day, and we were anticipating at some point that there would be an aggravation of situation. However, we were not, ready for such a blatant, actually, breach of international law.
So Ukraine's leader, Mr. Poroshenko, is talking about introducing martial law. Is that a preparation for full-scale war?
No, just otherwise. The president suggested to the parliament to introduce the martial law for 60 days now. So it's up to the Ukrainian parliament to decide according to our legislation. This is one point. The second is that we are not declaring any war against Russia. And this martial law is more for defense purposes. So for us to be ready to defend our country and to counter any threats to our territorial integrity and sovereignty.
Well, you know what the Russians are saying about martial law being declared, that President Poroshenko has got facing elections in March, and that martial law will allow him to do things like clamp down on the media.
Russians are trying to twist the Ukrainian legislation at that point, because according to our legislation on martial law, yes, you cannot hold the elections, but our elections are scheduled for the last day of March. So we still have plenty of time, even taking into account that the martial law for 60 days will be introduced. So this is just, again, one more speculation.
Now, what about the international response? And let's start with your position here in London. Have you spoken to the Foreign Office, the UK Foreign Office, the Foreign Secretary, Jeremy Hunt?
As the incident happened tonight, so yesterday, so we immediately informed the Foreign Office about what is going on. Today I was lucky enough to personally speak to Foreign Secretary Jeremy Hunt about the situation, and even more, he was very tough about the position of the Foreign Office. So he said that United Kingdom is not only condemning the Russian aggression in the Sea of Azov, but also reminds its tough position about not recognizing the annexation of Crimea, and also actually standing against the Russian actions in Donbass.
And what do you want to hear from the United Nations, this emergency session being called? I mean, what do you want to hear from the Security Council, apart, of course, from Russia, who sit on that council?
Our idea is, of course, first and foremost, to inform the international community. And even, by minute, to depict how the situation was developing, who was trespassing there, and so on. We're not wearing rose glasses, and we know that Russia will be blocking any potential decision, for example, or any statement of the UN Security Council. So our, again, mission is more to inform the international community and then to shape even more international solidarity for Ukraine. We will be also doing something similar in the OSCE in Vienna. And also we will be raising the same question within the European Union.
But, Ambassador, is it going to make any difference? Russia's had an awful lot of international pressure on it for at least 4 years after it annexed Crimea, and it hasn't changed one single thing.
You're absolutely right, and it's very, very difficult to argue that Russia is unfortunately going unpunished after these 4 years of aggression. However, I cannot even imagine where Ukraine will be at this point. I mean, with reforms, with everything, internal development, if it was not because of the international community who was supporting us. and putting the sanctions on Putin. Otherwise, we will be standing alone.
But does Ukraine accept the reality of the situation, that Crimea is in effect gone? The Russians have joined it up now to Russian territory with that huge bridge. The international community is not going to intervene militarily on Ukraine's behalf. It's gone.
No, we are not, of course, expecting that NATO will come and will be fighting with Russians for us. So it's still for us and up to us to defend our own country. But again, so we would be doing everything also in our position, in our what we can do together with the international community to counter what Russians is doing. Because this is not only, you know, about grabbing the territory after all. I'm also meaning cyber attacks. I'm also meaning the attempts to interfere in our future elections. So all these things, I mean, all these threats, we are dealing with them every day.
Ambassador, thank you very much.